Hello and welcome to this episode of Pixel Journey. This one will be diving into the remakes of Gen 4 that we had gotten just a few years ago. So the Gen 4 remakes that we had gotten from Pokemon were not very well received. There was a lot of backlash regarding the quality and content that was in the games. And yeah, I can't really defend a whole lot about that. So this video is basically going to be me talking about my experience with the games, coming from someone who played the original on their first ever handheld, and that was their most played childhood game, and how they experienced the remakes. So as someone who put in 300 hours, which for me was a lot on a single game, this was my most played game. Pokémon Diamond, the original. It was given to me on my birthday with my very first DS. That was my very first my system, my handheld, and so it was very special. It was a very important game to me. That game, in my opinion, kind of shaped my childhood. It was by far the most nostalgic game that I can look back on during those times, and so I was really excited to hear that we were finally getting a remake and I could revisit Sinnoh and hopefully a better version of Sinnoh. I was really hoping that they would go the route of stuff like Alpha Sapphire and they would improve it and they would make it more of the definitive edition. And I was really looking forward to it because they had Pokemon Diamond and Pearl and they also had Platinum, which was at the time the definitive version. So I'm just like, they can combine stuff from Platinum with the others and it's going to be really good. And I was really, really excited for it. So in my typical fashion, I had to hold off. These games were released in November and my mom was just like, I'm getting it for you for Christmas. So I had to wait. So I think I did a pretty good job at staying away from a lot of content spoilers. I of course ran into pictures and stuff to where I saw the graphic style of the game and I saw the UI. And at that point, I started to lower my expectations for the game because I'm just like, this looks like the chibi style that you would see in a lot of mobile games. That's weird. That doesn't look as good. And then I got really confused because when you would go into the Pokemon battle, I thought that art style looked a lot better, and I honestly would have been a lot happier if they just took that art style and had that be the entire game. But I did manage to essentially not see any content about the story or any of that stuff until I was able to play the game. So I essentially went in blind. I was really hoping that by the time I got the game for Christmas, I would have Stockholmed myself into liking the cute chibi style, and I kind of did. I was able to like half Stockholm myself into being like, this isn't that bad, it's cute, look how cute it is. But that's about as much as I really gave it. Because boy, this was not the game that I grew up with. Jumping into this, the only positive thing that I got out of this was the one positive quality of life improvement. And that was the running shoes are equipped by default. That's it. You could run from the start. And I was thrilled with that. I'm just like, okay, we're starting out great. And then everything went downhill. So moving on from the sad appearance to it, let's actually get down to the actual critiques of the game and the content. So a lot of the past remakes, they would take the older game and they would use the current generation game and kind of mix them together to make the best version of that old game. They would enhance it. And that is not at all what they did with the Gen 4 remakes. Brilliant Diamond and Shinning Pearl are almost one-to-one copies of their original source material. And I think that's what me and a lot of other people are saying is bad about them. They don't live up to the standards that were put out by Pokemon themselves with their previous games. Nothing about these remakes felt new, they felt old, they felt aged. Now, like I mentioned earlier, there was some quality of life improvements, but in my opinion, the only real good one was the running shoes equipped by default. A lot of people did not like some of the other quality of life, and I can see why. So one of the things that I liked that I'm not sure if all the others enjoyed due to making the game too easy, too handholdy, was putting markers on your map to show where you're supposed to be going. So I oftentimes in Pokemon games, like I'm sure many others do, I get sidetracked trying to catch Pokemon in every new route that I'm in, and I would spend a lot of time on that. So a lot of the times that would end up with me being like, I forgot where I am in the story. I forgot where I'm supposed to be going. So just having that like little bit kept me from wandering around aimlessly like I did in the original. So that was, in my opinion, a nice quality of life. I can see where people would be like, that wasn't in the original, that makes it more handholdy. I liked it. Do with it as you will. You don't have to look at it. So something that irked a lot of people was the fact that the EXP share is on by default and you can't turn it off. So this can go one of two ways. The people who didn't like it are the people that typically they stuck to their one party, they built it, and that is the party that they went and completed the entire game with, and having the EXP share on the entire time made their team so overpowered, it took any challenge out of the game. It was them one-shotting everything, and it wasn't fun. I can totally see that, because I am someone who typically sticks to one team, and I actually had to swap out team members because they were getting too overpowered and overleveled, and that was really annoying me. So I can totally see where that is. I wish we could just simply turn it off. That would literally solve everything. Or maybe have it to be the old style to where you put it on one Pokemon. Just something like that. I think that that is a really simple solution that would make a lot of people happy instead of having it only on, you cannot turn it off. I just feel like that's super restricting. And then you had the other people who are just like, this is great because now I can find other Pokemon and kind of trade them in and see who I like best. They didn't have to resort to, switch training their Pokemon up to a reasonable level for them to fight the content that they were at. It was a lot easier to, if you have one stronger Pokemon in the front of your party and you had 4 or 5, level 10s or something, but they're Pokemon that you want to try out, or maybe even just for evolving purposes for, say, your Pokedex, that did make it a lot easier. So I can totally see both sides of the story to where this is actually really helpful, but this can be really harmful. If we could just turn it off, that would literally solve everyone's problems. You could turn it off for the main content and not super overlevel your Pokemon, but you can also turn it on when you're trying to train up Pokemon to meet your main team's level, or if you're trying to evolve Pokemon. I just think Game Freak is really strong-arming people with having this on and not turning it off. It's a critique that people have of the current Gen 9 too, because you can't turn it off. I don't understand what Game Freak is doing with this. People don't like it. And another one, in addition to overleveling Pokemon, if you spend enough time with Pokemon, you will get a pretty high bond with your Pokemon. So friendship is a huge thing in this game, and it can often lead to Pokemon clearing status effects, living on 1 HP, and getting crits like crazy. So there's no real rhyme or reason, it's just that the Pokemon really loves you by the time you get mid-game. And so it can feel really disingenuous. It can feel like the Pokemon's really overpowered, and it can really sway how the battles are going in an already easy section, unless you're in the Elite Four, but we'll get to that in a minute. So a lot of people didn't like that because it took a lot of the strategy out of the game that already kind of lacks strategy, and compared to a lot of other JRPG turn battle style games, Pokemon's one of the easier ones, because at the end of the day, Game Freak does say that it is aimed towards a younger audience, so that's fair, but taking away what little challenge with Pokemon friendship, it's kind of weird. It doesn't feel great when you win due to a crit that you shouldn't have gotten, or when your Pokemon lives with 1 HP because they didn't want to see you upset if they fainted, or when they clear poison because they felt like it. So it's just the inconsistency in weird, easier alternatives that they put into the remake that is kind of rubbing people the wrong way, because you're changing a lot of the core aspects of the fighting, which is 90% of the Pokemon game. So throughout the base story of going and fighting the gym leaders, I really didn't feel like there was much of a challenge. I was essentially able to just one-shot most of my opponents because they did include one thing from the current gen, and that is the effectiveness labels on all of your moves. So it'll say not very effective, you know, immune, super effective, stuff like that. The wording that says click this move and you'll do a lot of damage. And so yes, that I do find that really good for younger audiences who are just getting into Pokemon and learning the type effectiveness. They'll be like, oh, this move is really good against this Pokemon. And it's been that way for the last 3 battles. So, okay, this works against this. I see that as a great training thing. And there's really nothing wrong with it. There's really no downside to that. Like, you can either choose to use the really effective move or not. But setting all that aside, all the gym battles were quite easy, no matter what, because the XP share was on. That is, until you hit the Elite Four. And so the Elite Four is where I feel that there is a huge spike in difficulty and challenge in the game that was not touched on at all in any of the previous fights. So the cool thing about the Elite Four is all of their Pokemon are basically competitively viable Pokemon with great movesets and items that actually fit the Pokemon. It was probably one of the hardest... Yeah, it was probably one of the most hardest Elite Four that I've fought. Because it actually was a lot harder than the original. So one of the downsides is this was a very, very intense difficulty spike. Going from these are really simple Pokemon and I'm one-shotting all of them to these are competitively viable Pokemon with really optimum movesets and an optimum, you know, berry or some kind of item that's held by them. I was seeing a lot of discourse online about younger fans who, you know, they're really early on into their Pokemon journey. They were getting just swept. They were getting demolished in these games. And it was really disheartening for them because no matter how hard they tried, they were losing. And it didn't feel fair because the spike was just out of nowhere for them. And some of them even felt so discouraged that they just dropped the game entirely. They couldn't win and they didn't see any scenario to where they could, so they gave up. And so all of this rhetoric online caused huge discourse on, was this the right thing to do? Does it need to be changed? And I'm just one stranger on the internet, but this is my video, so it's all about me giving my opinion on the game. And my opinion is, I feel like this setup would have been perfect for the rematch. I feel like this would have been awesome if you could do that with all of them, all of the Elite Four, all of the gym leaders and everything, going back through and having that be part of the post game to where all of them have competitively viable full teams and you could go through and it's kind of like a hard mode. I think that would have been amazing. But I think that this spike in the first run of the Elite Four is a bit too intense. Now, having been someone who's played Pokemon since childhood, I didn't struggle terribly, but I did struggle. I lost a few times and had to retry, and I struggled during Cynthia, and it was, I'm gonna say it, it wasn't due to my skill that I won, it was due to my Pokemon loving me a lot, and that was how I won. So it didn't feel great, it didn't feel like a genuine win. And that's coming from an adult who knows somewhat what they're doing, and even had their boyfriend who knows a lot, everything about Pokemon battles, helping me. It was really hard. And so I cannot imagine I was originally 8 when I played these games, being back to an 8-year-old and playing this game and thinking I'm doing great, thinking that my Pokemon are just going to be awesome in the Elite Four and just getting demolished no matter what I do. That would be really disheartening. So I do think that having that amount of just really intense increase in difficulty was a bit much, because at the end of the day, these games are targeted towards a younger audience, which means they don't have the experience that us who played these original games have. I think it should have been lowered a bit, and that this would have been perfect for a rematch. So jumping into something a little softer than this game is so hard it made kids cry and put the game down, my main gripe was with the mini games. So one of the main features in the original Pokemon Diamond that I spent hours playing was the Pokemon contests. When I got to the town in my playthrough of the remakes, I was so excited. I was ready. I was going to spend hours doing contests, and then my heart was shattered because they had completely changed it. Instead of being this wonderful thing that I can sink hundreds of hours into, it got demolished into a lackluster rhythm game. And so that really bummed me out, because I would spend a lot of time there, and I would spend a few days just trying to level up a Pokemon in whatever stat that they had. And so that was really sad for me. And then I feel like the Poffin game, I feel like that was not as fun. Like a lot of the little mini games just weren't as fun. And so that made me really sad, because the mini games are what really made it for me. And another thing that they removed that I really don't see why was they removed the casino. The only logical explanation I can have is casino, gambling, younger audience, they don't want kids gambling. That train of thought, it does make sense, but I'm kind of sad that they still removed it when that was part of the original game. Because you could get Pokemon there, and you could, you know, get money and stuff to buy like TMs and stuff from there, so it was a bit sad. But they did put in a store. They put in a clothing store. And you could kind of customize your character with different outfits. I thought that was really cool. I will give it that. That was really fun. I picked like a cute outfit, and that's what my trainer wore for the rest of the game. But I really do wish that they could have kept the casino and just put the clothing store in place of some old houses that you couldn't go into. But like I said, there's probably some logic with kids and gambling that they were told maybe remove the casino. I'm not quite sure, because I don't know any of the laws, and it is a Japanese-based company, so I don't know if they had to do something with the Japanese laws, and that was just what we got here in the localization too. Who knows? I'm sad it's gone, but there is probably a logical reason for it. But now you get to customize your character. So another thing, since I couldn't do my contests, was the underground. I would spend a lot of time underground looking for fossils and just finding little gems, and then I would never spend the gems and my bag would get full, and I would just constantly just change. Okay, I got a blue gem, I'm gonna get rid of a blue gem that's lower number. And that was what I would do for days. When I didn't want to search for Pokemon, I didn't want to evolve Pokemon, I would just be underground. So coming into the underground now was a bit bittersweet. They changed a lot of it, but at the core it's still the same mechanic that you're doing, which after seeing what they did to the contest, I'm glad that they didn't change a lot of the underground, the actual like digging mechanics. But I kind of wish that they would have left like the trap games, because I never got to really play those in the original, so I was kind of hoping that I could play them now. But since I never got to play them, I don't really have any attachment to them, so I'm not overly sad. It's just kind of, oh, I wish I could have gotten to experience that. One cool thing that I didn't know I would find was the statues. The little statues that you find in the walls that help increase spawn rate of a certain type of Pokemon. That was really cool, and I liked finding those. So that was a nice improvement. I was not expecting there to be just sections of high-level Pokemon in the underground that you can't find above ground. My only problem was I was severely underleveled when I first started to try and get them. I had one Pokemon wipe out like most of my team, and I was trying to catch it. But it was so high level I couldn't catch it. So that made for some interesting times. But the one thing that I was really sad about when I would catch a Pokemon, because it was super high level, I would feel like really accomplished in it. I couldn't register it in my Pokedex until after I finished the main story, because then you like evolve your Pokedex and you can register all that. So I was like, man, I know I'm catching them, but it feels like I'm not catching them because it's not logged in my Pokedex. But that was really cool. I could go and find different fire types because you know that there's a lack of fire types in this game, at least early game. So yeah, the underground was really cool. I don't remember a whole lot about bases because I didn't really mess around with bases in the original, but it was sad to see them kind of restrict your base to just put a bunch of statues in to go catch a certain type of Pokemon. It did not feel homey, it did not feel cozy, so that was kind of sad. It would have been cool if you had a separate room, just like put all of these in here and then you will increase your chance of running into an ice type or something like that. and then you have your base to where you could customize and make it your little home underground. But that would be a lot of work. Just like my example of post-game refighting everyone with optimum teams. I never said these were ideas that could be implemented. I just said that they were good ideas. So I think by far the worst part of these remakes is the fact that they really don't take anything from Platinum. Platinum was known as essentially the definitive edition of Gen 4 when it came out, because it had a bunch of content that the base games did not have. So I was thinking the least they can do is put some of their Platinum content into these remakes. But no. There was basically no Platinum content. There was essentially zero post-game. It was very sad. It was a big disappointment for a lot of people. They could have at least included something to satisfy fans, but yet again, it's showing that this was more of a one-to-one remake with a few extras sprinkled in, like the underground. So after I finished the story of Brilliant Diamond, I had no motivation to do anything else. I had no motivation to finish my Pokedex, either catching Pokemon or evolving them, hatching any Pokemon. I didn't really breed any of my Pokemon. I threw them in the daycare to level them. I just felt kind of done. My journey through Sinnoh and adulthood was done. It's really sad because I felt like I played through a worse version of Sinnoh. I played through a worse version of the game that made my childhood. Like I said, the original version of Pokemon Diamond was my most played childhood game. And I was really hoping that these games would be that experience again. I would relive all this nostalgia, and it would just have a fresh coat of paint and some new quality of life things and some new mechanics pulled from newer games to just make it better. But that is not what I got. I got a chibi-fied, easier version of Pokemon Diamond. The nostalgia did push me to complete this game. In sections that I forgot about, in sections that I had gotten stuck on previously, I did feel nostalgia. I was like, oh my god, I'm back here again and I actually know what I'm doing. But that was the main driver of my playthrough. After I finished the game, I looked back on it, and I'm not sure if I truly enjoyed it or I needed to enjoy it. I needed it for the sake of not throwing away the last bits of hope for the Pokemon franchise. And after seeing this game in Scarlet and Violet, that hope is dangling. So hopefully in 2025, with 𝕬𝕗, they will regain my trust and confidence. Because at some point they gotta stop making these throwaway games, right? They have to, right? Okay, so that's all I really have. Just, I was so looking forward to this game, like so many others, and it was just such a letdown. I was so sad. So yeah, that's essentially all that I have to say about this. If you've played through these remakes, let me know in the comments down below what you thought. Let me know, did you play the originals, or did you go into this as the first time you have seen common day Sinnoh? Yeah, I would just love your thoughts. If you did play the original, if you didn't, let me know. Did you like the quality of life changes that I mentioned? Did you think it would be weird if this was the first time playing Sinnoh if they didn't have those things? Just let me know, and let me know your favorite Gen 4 Pokemon. So that's all for me today. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!